Hello, namaste. Welcome to the next installment of Stuck at Home. This time we're armchair traveling to Rajasthan, and I'm going to explain this outfit to you, and I'm going to tell you a story from a love story from my book, Eat Your Heart Out, which is set in Rajasthan. So we'll start with the outfit. This is a typical Rajasthan. I mean, this is very formal, obviously. It's a wedding outfit, but it's typical because it's got the skirt, it's got the blouse, and it's got the shawl of the way Rajasthani women dress. I'm just going to show you the full drama of this thing. I bought this actually in Calcutta at a wedding shop to wear on my one-woman stage show. So it's incredibly voluminous. It's tied at the waist with ties like this, and it has a very stiff, sticky-outy petticoat under it to make sure that it keeps its full volume. And then, so you've got your skirt, and then you've got your blouse. It's a three-piece outfit, and you've got your blouse or choli. And in traditional Rajasthani dress, they have a double blouse because they have a blouse sewn in under this. But so I've got this one, and it's hand blocked in gold paint. The blouse, the choli, is hand painted, and then the third piece is the shawl or the dupatta. So normally you would just kind of wear it over your shoulder or whatever, but the way Rajasthani women tend to do it, and this is a very approximate version of what they do, because I'm not an expert at it, they tuck it into a side of their skirt, and then they wrap it around themselves. And it goes over your shoulder. Now, if you see, a lot of people will just let it sit like that, and that's fine. But if you want to go further than that, if you want to extend the look, or for modesty, or even for warmth, really, they'll extend the dupatta so it goes over their heads. And then if a man comes into the room, you can just immediately do that. And your modesty is preserved. But in this case, I'm going to take the dupatta off because it's just one too many things. And I'm going to tell you the story set in Rajasthan, which my friend and a manager of my tours in India told me. This absolutely incredible story of this fort, this very ancient fort in Rajasthan called Chittorgarh. And there is a very dramatic story attached with it, which is in my book. So what happened? So just to give you a bit of history, this is a 14th century fort, absolutely enormous, originally from the 8th century, but the story is set in the 14th century. There are two main protagonists. There's a beautiful princess called Padmini, and there's the handsome prince called Ratan Singh. He hears about her through her talking parrot. How can this not be a good story? But I'll get back to that. Sanskrit poetry, this story is told in Sanskrit poetry, and there are many versions, as you can imagine, because it's a medieval story. So my publisher and I discussed all the different versions that we came across, and I ended up writing this one. But I mean, there are people who will disagree with this and say this is not how it happened. But anyway, Sanskrit poetry is very sexy, very colourful, and very racy. There's no pretending what's happening is not happening. So in this story, we have everything to make a good story. We've got a talking parrot, we've got an exceptionally beautiful queen, we've got a staunch, loving husband, we've got an occasional flagrante delicto, we've got a dastardly Mughal sultan, a military assault and drag, and pathological heroism. What's not to like? So it's a love story, not only between a man and a woman, but also it's about the love for country, for custom, for tribe and for honor. Rajput, he was obviously a Rajput, but because she was living in Sri Lanka, what is now Sri Lanka, and he heard about her through the talking parrot. Because her best friend was a talking parrot, and they spent all their time together. And for some reason, the parrot was stolen off her, and it went through many hands. It was sold to different people. Somehow it ended up in Rajasthan, which is miles away, in this king's hands. He bought it because it was a famous talking parrot. But as he got to know the parrot started talking about this woman. He started waxing lyrical about this beautiful, beautiful princess who he missed so much. And Ratan Singh, sitting in his fort in Rajasthan, fell in love with her just by what the parrot was telling him. And so he asked the parrot to take him to her because he was going to ask her to marry him. So it's a very long, complicated story as to how he achieved that. But he did, and she did marry him, and he brought her back to the fort in Rajasthan. And as with all marriages that are arranged by parrots, they actually fell in love after they got married. So, and and Diggy, who told me this story, is from this caste, this high Rajput caste. Not everyone in Rajasthan is a Rajput. It's the highest caste. Some people are Rajputs, and they are today exactly the way they were then. They're the warrior caste. They were the people who were proud and fierce and who defended everyone else. And to this day, Rajasthanis are still very big on honor and doing things properly. And it's the most conservative state in India. The Rajasthanis are good looking. They're tall. Even the women are quite tall and very proud and very statuesque with these gorgeous almond-shaped eyes. And the men have these fabulous big moustaches. And the Rajasthanis are very charming and very good storytellers, and they're very confident. And they were like that then, and they're like that now. And so we've got this fabulous setup. We've got this unbelievable fort. We've got these two gorgeous people. We've got thousands and thousands of people living in the walled fort. Okay, so this fort was 6 kilometers long, just to give you an idea. 500 meters across. It had 4 palaces in it, the steps of which were inlaid with lapis lazuli. There was fabulous wealth in India at that point. Pavilions, temples, farms, horse stables, elephants, camels. They had fabulous ornate gardens. They had a man-made lake. All this was within this fortified place. They had a deer park. Into this happy scene, happy marriage, came the Mughal Sultan in Delhi. His name was Alauddin, or Aladdin, probably the same origin, probably the same guy, but that's another story. He heard about, because we're talking about the 14th century, so around about that time, the Arabs, the Persians, invaded India. They came down from the north and they set up their main government in Delhi at that time. So that's where this guy was. And he heard about this unbelievably beautiful woman who had a talking parrot. And he decided that he had to have her. See, I'm still only setting the story up. You can imagine how good the story is going to be if I ever get to it. So he decided he was going to have her, but he not only wanted her, he wanted the fort, and he wanted a bit of Rajasthan real estate. This was a very wealthy state. The biggest state in India and the desert state. So we're in the middle of nowhere. Anyway, so he gathers his army together and they go down on their elephants and their horses and they invade the fort. There was a terrible war, a very, very violent war, which lasted for 2 months, which involved lots of trickery, lots of sabotage, lots of bombardment. Eventually, the people inside, Ratan Singh, Padmini, and all their people, their thousands of people, realized that they were outmanned. I mean, this Sultan's army from Delhi was much bigger than even what they had, and they had thousands and thousands of soldiers. But because this guy decided to be patient, he thought to himself, I'll just starve them out. So time went by, and they realized inside the fort that they weren't going to win, that they could never win. And so they took the next drastic action, which is what you do when honor and pride are everything. But Padmini said, I will never submit. Never, never, never. I will take the ultimate act and do what I ultimately have to do if I'm forced into it. And all the men, her husband agreed with her, and all the men agreed with her, and they knew they all had to sacrifice themselves, but they weren't going to go down quietly. So the men dyed their clothes with saffron orange, and they put ash on their foreheads. The women dressed themselves up in their wedding outfits and gathered all the children. The men went out of the fort to fight the Sultan, knowing that they would die, so it was a suicidal exercise. And then as they were fighting, the Sultan's army looked up at the fort and saw flames and smoke coming up out of it. And they knew what that meant. They knew what had happened. What Padmini had done, she had gathered all the women and all the children, dressed them up in their finery, like this, lit huge pyres, and threw themselves on the pyres in a ritual suicide, rather than be taken. The suicide is called Johar, which of course would never happen now, but in those days it was a great problem-solving device. So they just all burnt themselves. So finally the Sultan and his army got into the fort, and what did they find? It was just a huge funeral pyre. The whole place looked like a funeral. Everybody was burned, everybody was dead, everything was destroyed, most of the buildings were destroyed. And he stood there and he said to himself, why did I do this? Nobody won. I don't have anything. I don't have her, I don't have him, I don't have the fort. I've lost a huge amount of money, I've lost a huge amount of people. Why did I do this? You may well ask. This is the price of love and honor. So he, of course, because he took over the castle in the end, what happened was that he gave it to his son. But it was a poison chalice. You know, the son didn't want it, and the son eventually sold it back to a descendant of Ratan Singh, part of their family. And to this day, that fort is still open, and you can still go and visit it. It's there are people who live in it. There are like a couple of thousand villagers who live in this place, even though it's semi-ruined. And it's very, very typical story of the drama of love stories in Indian history and mythology. You know, it's all kind of mixed up a little bit. So that's my happy story for today. Namaste, have a lovely day, and I'll see you next time.